Hi everybody, welcome to video 2 of lesson 5 on modern existentialism. I'm trying to keep up with all these numbers. Video 2 of lesson 5 on modern existentialism. The name of this fifth lesson is Crafting Our Own Story. And in the previous video, the first video of this lesson, we talked about stories, that we are the stories we tell ourselves. And from the perspective of modern existentialism, a story is a account, narrative, or statement that addresses two fundamental aspects of our life. One of them is our identity, and the other one is our purpose or mission in life. So that is, existentially speaking, what a story is. It's an account of who you are and or who you think you are and why you're here for, what's your mission, right? And we're going to start talking about the first part, right, of this story, the identity part, and we're going to do it with this book by David Brooks, The Second Mountain. In The Second Mountain, Canadian-American journalist David Brooks writes the following. Some people are busy at work but realize they've lost the thread of their lives. Some people suffer a heartbreak or lose a loved one, which makes them feel as if some bright future is forever lost. Others get knocked sideways by a heart attack, cancer, or stroke. Others experience failure or scandal. They've built their identity on some external performance, and that is now gone. Okay, we're going to start with this idea, friends. How to craft your identity, the identity part of your story, right? I often talk about this idea as having a self-definition. Okay, that's what it is, right? You define yourself like in a statement that basically encapsulates who you are as an individual. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. And when you're crafting a self-definition, one thing that you should not do is to base your identity on things that you can lose, like a job, for example. Many people do this, right? They identify themselves with their job, and that's where they find their identity and their value as a human being. And I remember many years ago, I read this news about a very successful lawyer in Texas who committed suicide because his license to exercise law was suspended or revoked because of some malpractice that he did. He was not fully aware of, but something wrong that he did. He messed up. And when he realized that he was not going to be able to exercise law anymore, he committed suicide. And it was somebody in his late 30s, quite successful, millionaire. And okay, that's what happens when you base your identity on something you can lose, performance, like it says right here, right? And that it's not appropriate. You don't want to do that when you craft your own self-definition. We talked about this many times in previous videos, but it's worth saying it again because it's crucial. I said many times that your unique set of values pretty much constitute a description of who you are as an individual. Okay, so that's where we start, building our self-definition with identifying what things are particularly uniquely valuable to you. Okay, if you are the kind of person who says things, you believe that, okay, prosperity is very important to me. Well, guess what? That's true for most people. So there's nothing very unique about valuing prosperity. Some people say, well, health, it's very important. Okay, well, same. Most people value the exact same thing. In family, it's one that people, probably the first one, when I ask my students, what is most valuable in your life? Most of the time, this is what they say family, their family. And I ask, right, every time I hear an answer like that, I ask the rest of the students. I said, okay, raise your hand if your family is super, super important to you. And everybody raised their hand. I said, okay, we need something better, more concrete, more personal. Is there such a thing? Of course. Do you remember my former student, Claire? I think I mentioned her in lesson 3, Living Existentially. And Claire was a young lady who was passionate about literature. I mean, this girl would read book after book, and guess what she was studying in college? Literature. Like obviously, right? She wanted to make that her life. Reading, being around books and doing something related to books, maybe teaching, even though she was not into teaching. But and I said in lesson 3 that she leaned more towards like being a librarian. But anyways, how many people do you know that they have a consuming passion about books and literature? Okay, maybe you know one person or two, maybe none. And okay, well, then that means that we have something very particular. One thing, having a passion for something, for books in this case, in Claire's case. Okay, well, keep investigating, keep digging within, and you're going to find more things. Okay, and in my particular case, I have found in my current self-definition there are 3 elements, 3 things that I value the most, and I use those things to come up with a self-definition, and I'm gonna disclose that for the first time um, in this video. What is my full self-definition? And just to give you an example, because man, I hate uh, thinking that some of you watching might be thinking, oh, this guy's all about himself. No, I mean I always say it's boring when I'm the only one talking, and when I'm just talking about myself. That's really, really boring. Really, I mean, I've always been more interested in learning about other people's lives, but I'm using myself, my experiences as examples just to illustrate the ideas that I'm trying to communicate here. So I want to show you how I crafted my self-definition and why I did it the way I did. So in coming up with a self-definition, then you first need to understand your values, what is most valuable to you as an individual. Once again, it has to be something that um, make you stand out from the rest. Like Claire, she absolutely loves books. Okay, that's not most people. Okay, if you can find 1 or 2 more things, we're going to have a very clear, distinct idea of the kind of individual you are. Okay, so now here's something very, very important to address in this quote. When he says, some people suffer a heartbreak or lose a loved one, which makes them feel as if some bright future is forever lost. Sometimes people base their identity on a relationship. Okay, and I gotta say, that happened to me. Excuse me. And I realized that it was a mistake. Um, it was what? About 8 years ago now. I got divorced, and I had two daughters at the time. I have three now with my wife. But back then, I had two daughters, and they were pretty young by the time I got divorced. And they were 8. The youngest one was about 8, and my oldest was about 12, something like that, 8 and 12. So they were quite young, and it was the divorce was really really painful for all of us, especially for me because I was married for 16 years, and my family was the most important thing in my life. And one day I realized that I lost it, that it was gone. All I had was the pieces, very important pieces, my two daughters, my 8-year-old and my 12-year-old. So what I did, and considering, I was in a very, very sad place emotionally. I was depressed for about 3 years. And it was hard for me to accept the fact that I was not part of a family anymore. So what I did was I dedicated all my life to my two girls, and that was it. That was pretty much the purpose of my life. And I would work Monday through Friday, and man, Friday I would every single Friday I would go to pick up my girls and bring them over to my place, and we would spend the weekend together. My ex-wife, she uh, she agreed that we should spend all weekends together, not every other weekend, but every single weekend, which was great. She knew how close my girls were with me, and I with them. And so she knew that it would be the best for everybody, that they spend as much time as possible with me. So that was my life, right? Working Monday through Friday and always thinking about the weekend because I lived for the weekend with my girls. I would pick them up Friday and then take them back home Sunday. After which, I would drive back home in tears, honestly, because it was so great, so special when we were together, and so meaningful, so beautiful, but it was so painful, heartbreaking saying goodbye on Sunday. Even though I would see him again in 5 days, it was really, really hard, especially at the beginning. And you know what? And at that time, in my self-definition was the word father, that I am a father because I mean, my whole world revolved around my girls. So, and one day something interesting happened. About 2 years, 2.5 years later, or 3 years, they started becoming teenagers, right? And they started making, very special friends at school, middle school. And one day, I remember I was going to pick them up on Friday, and they called me earlier and they said, Dad, do you mind if we don't spend time together this weekend? Because we have a, what was it, sleepover and with some friends from school, and, we're going to spend kind of like the weekend. And I said, yeah, 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 sure. Hey, no, no, no worries, honey. And so they canceled me for that weekend. And I was just so excited about spending time with them. And they called me that very day, Friday. I was getting ready to pick them up to cancel. And I remember that was really, really, really hard. And I remember feeling lonely, depressed that weekend. I didn't know what to do. All my plans for the weekend with my girls, they were just gone. And then, okay, and then a few weeks later, they did it again. And then they did it a third time. And I began thinking, okay, well, that's the natural way of things, right? Children grow up and they begin, you know, living their own lives. And I realized that I had to accept that yes, I'm a father. I love my girls to death. I consider myself a family man. My family is super important to me. Please don't get me wrong. It is very important to me, but it's not in my self-definition. It's not. Why? Because you can lose your family. They can be with you now, maybe tomorrow. They won't. Once again, it doesn't mean that you don't love your family, that you shouldn't love your family. No, I love my family to death. I said that already. But it was best for me, for my mental sanity, to understand that as an individual, I needed to base my identity on something unshakable, okay, something solid. So something that I know I won't lose. So I removed that word, father, from my self-definition. I don't define myself as a father anymore. Now, I I have a uh, it's a work in progress because it's true that people change with time, right? You have experiences and you discover things, right? So it's perfectly fine to over time modify, tweak your self-definition, right? And my self-definition has been a work in progress for, I don't know, for like 10 years. And but I remember like 3 years ago, or four, I removed that word father from my self-definition. I have come up with, now I have a self-definition in 10 words. It's a statement in 10 words. The first three words, I am a, and then comes the rest of the statement, which is what I'm going to show you in the next slide. Okay, so this is my story, part one. Okay, the first part of my story, my identity clause. Okay, like because my story is a long statement. It's a statement with two clauses: my identity clause and my purpose clause. But I'm going to start with the identity clause, or the identity part of my story. And here we go. Here we go. I am a right. The first I said it's a self-definition of in 10 words, and here's the first three words. Now, um, the next word, the first thing that it's very valuable to me is the fact that I am Hispanic. Okay, and I've been living in the United States for most of my life. Okay, I became an American citizen many, many years ago, decades ago, actually. And I do not see myself living in any other country but the United States. This is my country by choice. Okay. I was accidentally born in another country. And by accidentally, I mean, I had nothing to do with that. It wasn't my choice, but it was my choice to become an American citizen. And I love this country. However, I am Hispanic. My first language is Spanish. The food I eat is Hispanic. Many, if not most of my friends, well, many friends, my closest friends, I would say most of my closest friends are Hispanic. My wife is Hispanic, and that's very important to me, the language, um, and the culture and what it means, the skin color. For many years, I struggled, okay, in America because, people would recognize that I was an immigrant, right? And my English was not the best, my pronunciation, right? My accent. And I was so self-conscious about it that it was just very, very difficult for me to deal with that sometimes. I could not even speak in public because I was afraid of people, recognizing my accent, and so I was so insecure. And man, one day I told myself, I had it. I said to myself, what's wrong with being Hispanic? Like, okay, I'm an immigrant. Okay, I'm gonna have an accent as a consequence, right? English was not my first language, it's Spanish. So it's something that I enjoy, being when I travel and go to Spanish speaking country. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to fully immerse myself in the culture because I understand the culture. I understand the language. It's a beautiful thing. So I can't change it. It's always going to be with me. And I one day I decided to fully embrace it and say, you know what? So what? Okay, I have an accent. So what? I'm Hispanic. That's who I am. And I remember one day when I had this, when I finally came to terms with this idea, right, with the fact that I'm Hispanic. I remember I was teaching Spanish at in a high school Spanish, and it was a school mostly white people. And there was this white student who one day she looked at me like very strange, right? I was explaining something, and she said to me, Mr. Molina, why you speak like that? And I said, what do you mean like that? Like what? You you pronounce the words so strange. And she was being sincere. I mean, the poor thing. And everybody else was almost like laughing at her question. And I said to her, instead of feeling, I'm different, I'm weird. At that time, I said to her, okay, I said, look, so I approached her and I said, okay, I placed my arm next to hers and I said, look at my arm and look at yours. Do you see any difference? Do you think they're the same? And she was like, no, they're not the same. And what do you think it's different? What stands out that's different? You have a darker skin. And I said, why do you think I have darker skin? And she was like, because you're from a different country. And I said, bingo, yes. You see, that's why I look different. I speak different. I'm from a different country. And I remember how everybody was just laughing. And I was laughing. I was not making fun of her. It was just great. It was liberating. Not feeling insecure. Why? I mean, I love who I am. I love my Spanish speaking, my Spanish culture. I love it. I love the food, the music. Oh man, I love the music. So, um, hell, finally embraced it. It's part of me. It's not gonna go away. It's never gonna go away. Never. And when I hear Spanish speaking, I'm like, oof, it's great, man. So, okay, so I'm Hispanic, something that I value. It's very important to me. And what else? Oops. I am an educator. I already disclosed the last part. I'm an educator. And okay, um, and this is something very important, friends. When you come up with your self definition, try to find nouns rather than adjectives because the adjective it's broad sometimes, right? And the noun it's more specific, it's more concrete. You have a more concrete person in a noun, right? So, okay, an educator, it's a noun, and I've I realized many years ago that I not only love teaching, but it's what I love doing the most. The most. I I will not retire. I have had this conversation with people when people ask me, "What are you going to do when you retire?" I'm retiring. What do you mean? I'm not retiring. And they wonder, you don't. I mean, you don't get tired of teaching. Getting tired of teaching is getting tired of being me. Getting tired of living. I can't retire of being myself. I know till the day I die, I'm going to be teaching something. if I'm not engaged in teaching, helping people learn things, sharing my wisdom, my experience, showing people the way, if I don't do that, my life will be pointless. I mean, honestly, this is what I said that already. I love doing the most. And one day I had this realization, and you might think it's creepy. I've shared it with my students sometimes, and they think it's creepy, some of them. But existentialist thinkers, we think a lot, death, a lot, a lot, because death help us putting things in perspective. Normally, when somebody, and I've heard so many stories, people who had accidents, and then when they recovered from the accident, in in being facing death so closely, they sort of opened their eyes and realized that they were not living the life that they really wanted to live. They were not doing the things that they really wanted to do, the very important things for them, and then they turn around completely. We're talking about people who were, I remember one particular individual who was about to graduate as an engineer, and he last year he dropped school and he began doing teaching, and his mom couldn't believe it. She was paying for his education, very expensive, right? And mom could not understand why he quit the last semester before graduating, completing his career in engineering. And he said to her, "Listen, mom, I have only one life to live, and I was given a second chance. I want to live every single day of my life knowing that I'm doing what is right for me and what I love the most." And I was studying engineering just to please you, but it's not it's not what I want to do. It's not who I want to be. I've heard stories like that so many times. So it's important to be confronted by death and thinking about death, and looking at your life with that idea in mind. So one day I had this realization. I said to myself that I would love that the perfect death for me, perfect death, perfect way of dying would be teaching philosophy in a classroom, doing what I love the most. Excuse me. That will be the ideal life, the ideal death for me. I'm sorry. And I remember one day I expressed this to my students, my philosophy students. I did it actually many times. And in addressing existentialism, and obviously some of them find it, you know, uh, uh, creepy, and but it's true. Now, funny thing is, one day in the middle of a class, I was teaching Intro to Ethics. In the middle of a class, I started having an anxiety attack. This was during the this was like second year of my after my divorce, when I was, I mean, in a very, very, very difficult spot in my life, depressed, right? And I never had an anxiety attack before, and and it was scary because it's almost, you feel like your body's telling you that there's something wrong. There's something wrong inside, and you really feel like you're going to die, like your heart is pumping really fast, and you lose your breath, and at least that's how I was feeling at the time. And my students immediately, right, they recognized that there was something wrong with me, and some of them stood up, right, from their desk, and they were like, "Mr. Molina, are you okay?" And I had to sit down and breathe, and I said, I'm fine. And they were like, "Mr. Molina, we're gonna call 911." And I said, "No, no." I said, "Nobody called 911." And then they remembered what I said, a few days before, that my perfect death, my ideal death, would be teaching philosophy. And I said to them, I'm going to finish my lecture. And they were so scared. It was just a funny thing to see and witness. But I continued teaching the class and going over my PowerPoint. I was shaking, and I was my countenance, I guess, was pale, and at times I had to stop and sit down and breathe. And the students were about to run out the door to get some help. And I said, nobody leaves the classroom. I'm gonna finish my lecture. This is my time. This is my opportunity, and to fulfill a desire. This is how I want to die. Imagine how creepy is that, right? And I continue teaching, and I finished the lecture. And honestly, I was scared. I was shaking, and at the end of the lecture, but at the same time, I felt like, wow, this is great. It's happening. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna die in a classroom teaching philosophy. How great is that? Anyways, I finished the lecture. I went to the a school clinic, and they took my blood pressure. They noticed that it was not. I don't remember if it was high or low, but they said that I should go to the ER emergency room, and I did, because honestly, I thought that I was going to die. I was going to have a heart attack, something. I was going to die. Turned out that doctors told me later that it was an anxiety attack. I didn't know what it was. So, but it was pretty scary, horrible thing, to feel. And anyways, that's how much I love what I do. When I married my wife, I said, before marrying her, I said to her, I said, listen, there's something you got to know about me. My job, it's not a job. Yeah, I get paid, but this is who I am. So you're going to live with an educator, with someone who is committed till the very last day, last minute of his life to teach others stuff, help other with wisdom, sometimes encouragement. I am that guy, and that it's not restricted to Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. No, that's any time, any day. I have the opportunity. I'm gonna take it. So I said, "Are you okay with that?" And because that's who you're marrying. That's who I am. So I am a Hispanic educator. Okay, now, right? How many Hispanic educators do you know? Okay, maybe one, two. Maybe you have a teacher in high school, a Spanish teacher. But you know what I'm saying. This is not most people, right? And finally, I am a follower of Christ. Those are 10 words, right? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes. Okay, I said in the past that I'm not religious, and I'm not. But I have to explain that. Religion, friends, comes from a Latin word, religio, which means rule. Okay, which makes sense. Religion being uh, a set of rules that you abide by, you live by. A set of rules. Don't do this, don't do that. You can think of the 10 Commandments, for example, right? That's 10 rules you're committed to live by. And okay, that's religion. Okay, I am not religious in that way. And my faith is not following a specific set of rules, and that's it. That's my relationship with God. No. Uh, I used to be religious. I used to be part of a religious community. I learned a lot. There were good and bad things, but the good things, right, is what I want to talk about now. I don't think anybody has had a more profound influence in my life than Jesus Christ or the teachings of Jesus Christ. And gosh, I remember reading the New Testament and my uh, work break, and I remember just being by myself reading and crying, and because so much of the teachings of Jesus were just they still do, they speak directly to my heart, and I began to adopt and make those teachings part of my life. And as a consequence, my life changed for the better. Like I was able to understand so many things to fix my relationship with people, with my family. I learned to forgive, and I learned to be patient. I learned to be thankful, which I was not. For most of my life, I was resentful, and I felt so entitled about so many things. And gosh, it was pathetic, the person I used to be. And my father has had a tremendous influence in my life. A lot of my dad is still in me, and I'm very, very, very aware of what it is. And a lot of my big brother, I can almost hear my big brother's voice in my head. It's one of the voices that I can most clearly distinguish in my head. When I'm doing something, I hear his voice speaking to me. You're stupid. You shouldn't do that. That's what my brother would say. So, but nobody has had the influence, and nobody has changed me like Jesus Christ. Now I stopped going to church. I go occasionally, um, because I realized that I'm not a follower of men. And men, pastors, priests, religious leaders, right? Many of them are great, but they are imperfect, right? They mess up, and they have their, you know, um, shortcomings. Let's put it that way. And you grow very disappointed when you begin to rely on these people, and you think like these people, they're a connection between you and God, and then when you realize how messed up these people can be, religious leaders, then you can grow pretty dissatisfied with church, with religion in general. And I mean, I think about it. When people, I have asked, I have asked so many so-called agnostics, right? Why they're agnostic? Like why they don't believe in God? And they all say the same thing. Oh, because they had a terrible experience at some church. They were abused. They were neglected by the leadership of the church. So that can be very disappointing. I don't think Jesus is disappointing. I think he's always there, and it's part of who I am. It's part of the things that are most valuable in my life. Most valuable. Uh, the value I see in the teachings of Jesus Christ. So I do read the Bible, and mostly the New Testament, but I'm quite familiar with the Bible, and I don't do it out of a sense of responsibility. No, I do it out of a sense of pure joy, and sometimes need. Like I need to find wisdom and encouragement in the Bible, in the New Testament, and I have found it so many times in the past. So this is very, very important to me. And first time, very first time, I'm disclosing this, because I always, in my philosophy classes, I always address the first two, Hispanic and educator, and then I say, okay, I'm not gonna disclose the last part of my self-definition because because I have my reasons. I don't want to influence anybody in any way. I don't want to be seen as somebody who's trying to preach, right, and convert other people. Um, and this is me. This is who I am. Of course, I don't apologize for it. I'm proud of who I am. And in this self-definition in this video, I hope that you have an idea now of what you're supposed to do. How can you come up with a appropriate self-definition? Okay, I would say, okay, number one, ask yourself what is most valuable to you as an individual. If you say vague things most people find valuable, okay, then that's not good. You're not in the right path. You need to find concrete things that are uniquely important to you. If you're young, okay, and maybe you don't know, okay, well, that's okay. Try to go out and have experiences, meet different people, go to different places, engage in different things, activities, right? And you'll discover, what's really cool to you, right? So you need to find what is particularly valuable, important to you. That's number one. Number two, once you identified what is very valuable to you, one, two things, three would be great. Then you can use those things to come up with a statement like this one. I am a, and then you fill in the blanks. Once again, try to use nouns, not adjectives. And so you have a more clear idea of the kind of individual you are. This is how you craft uh, a self-definition, an identity, in your story. The next thing we're going to talk about in the next video is the other part of the story, the purpose clause, the purpose part of the story. Okay, knowing now who I am, now the question is, what am I supposed to do with my life, right? What am I here for, right? The big why question. And I said this in the previous video. Knowing this question is it's the most empowering thing. I mean, if you want an answer to a why question, this is the one that you need the most. Why you're here. That's what we're going to address on the next video, and you're going to see how you can find the right purpose, friends, not the wrong one, because we're going to talk about wrong purposes, people who believed in a purpose that was not fitting to them. We're going to talk about how to find the correct purpose, mission for your life. Think about it. So I hope you're excited as I am. For now, I'm going to say bye. I hope this video was useful. Remember, like and subscribe if you find this videos useful, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.